Okay, looks
All
like you've
right.
started. Cool.
Yep. Go ahead.
Well, anyway, so I started Ruby about a year and a half ago by just calling some people whose books I had read. Erica Edelson, who Cody and I know well, she's one of the co-founding members. A woman named Arlie Hochschild, who wrote a book about rural Louisianans called Strangers in Their Own Land. A woman named Kathy Kramer, who wrote The Politics of Resentment. She talked to rural people in Wisconsin for like 5 years about why they had gone for Scott Walker. This was pre-Trump. So we started it just kind of bringing people together, and it's grown quite steadily. We'll talk a little bit more about where it's at now, but basically a couple of things happened. My work, as I've been in Southwest Virginia, which is the Appalachian part of the state, for going on 40 years, about 37, 38 years now. And I've always done kind of farming and rural development work. I have a farm and I do rural development work. And I've seen as much as things had gotten bad in a lot of ways with the coal industry collapsing and tobacco collapsing and blah, blah, blah. There was also a lot of people fighting back, creating new jobs, new businesses and all that. And that's kind of what my work was about. And, but the politics weren't matching up with it. Politics, whether Democrat or Republican, was not supporting this kind of bottom-up effort to diversify the economy and rebuild post-tobacco, post-coal. So I ran for Congress in 2018. I'd run in 2012, and then I ran a very serious race in 2018. And I was relatively well known because of my work, not super well known. And we held 100 town hall meetings. We had thousands of people come out, and we had a great social media campaign. We even had more TV ad time than the Republican incumbent, with really good ads. We did everything right, basically, pretty much. And had a campaign laser focused on bread and butter issues, mostly local issues. And I got beaten almost 2-1. And so after that, I started thinking, you can't just like run a good campaign and be competitive in places like Southwest Virginia. Something else is going on. So that led me to then reach out to people, and Cody and Erica and others. Mm-hmm. So we've been operating as an organization for roughly a year now, give or take. And we've arrived at three main things we're trying to do. First of all, I should say that our kind of governing philosophy is that a lot of the resentment, the anger, the sort of culture of grievance that you see in rural places, it may be over the top, it might be a little excessive, but we think it's also got, it's got roots, it's well-founded. So in other words, there's a lot of people that are really pissed off, and they've got good reasons to be pissed off, because between economic collapse and opioids and countless other things, people have reasons to be angry. The problem is they've channeled most of that anger towards liberals and Democrats rather than, say, the plutocrats that are running our politics. But the reason they've channeled it towards us is because we've largely ignored rural area. We've ignored working class people. We've shifted from being a party of working class people to a party really of highly educated elites. And that's how the Democratic Party has gone. And so a lot of what we do, even though we know the Democratic Party and what we stand for and what we've done and try to do is way better than the Republicans, we still start from the starting place that we have to own our role in this mess. We have to understand and own why so many working class people and why so many rural people have not just left the Democratic Party, but they hate us and they mistrust us. We got to figure out why that is. So that's kind of the kind of foundation of it. We have three basic things we do right now. One is our rural urban divide training. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We've been doing that the longest, for a little over a year. Done it about 24 times, about half of those times with local Democratic committees, and the other half of the time with kind of liberal, progressive environmental groups. So I just finished a training with the Union of Concerned Scientists. I just did one with the Sierra Club in Southern Illinois. We've done them with indivisible chapters and Our Revolution state chapters and all that. So we do the training for Democrats and liberal progressive people about half the time in rural counties and the other half the time in more urban centers. But the training's essentially the same. So the training is one thing. The second is, well, I'll ask Cody to talk about. It's a project to understand why some Democrats have done better in rural places than they should have. Cody?
So we have looked at basically every single candidate in rural places, from state legislature all the way up to, federal Senate and gubernatorial candidates. And we took a bunch of folks who had outperformed the partisan lean. So even if they didn't win, there was still a big shift in their direction, than more than what you'd expect. And so
Cody,
we've done
Cody, those races were, which races were included? Which
sure.
cycles?
So 2016, 2018, and 2020, all sort of like Trump era stuff. And to try and see if there's like a secret sauce. We've interviewed about 40 folks at this point in 22 different states. And we're still doing some interviewing, but really trying to distill down, is there a secret sauce that can be bottled and passed around a little bit to do better? Now, we know that, as Anthony just said, Anthony was an overperformer. So doing all the right things does move the needle. And I think part of our analysis is this is a long-term project. But we think, there's something to learn from folks, even if they don't win the election. Outperforming the partisan lean means something. Those people maybe are more likely to vote Democrat in the future, having done so with a candidate like Anthony. But B, there's still a big problem with the Democratic Party brand. There's only so much you can do, as Anthony was just saying, to run a perfect campaign when the brand is weighing you down. And so I'll sort of kick back to Anthony about our last working group that's really, I think, focused on that brand rehabilitation.
And Cody, just so they know, I know it's fluid, but we're hoping that analysis with the secret sauce recipe will be available sometime this summer, right?
Yeah. We'll start shipping bottles of secret sauce this summer.
So our third initiative is the one that is probably the most difficult to exactly describe, but one we're all really excited about. It's two pieces of the same coin. One is getting local Democratic committees to do what Susan is doing, what Marsh is doing, but to become a routine part of the function of being a local Democratic committee, to do community service. We refer to it as community works. And the kinds of things you all described, from vaccine clinics to scholarship funds to cleanups, to food drives and school supplies, that's all in the spectrum. Other things that some of the groups that we're working with are doing or considering are things like joining with the local Chamber of Commerce for a buy local campaign for local businesses, or joining with farmers to do something around either starting or improving, strengthening the farmers market in their community. So a whole spectrum of things, but the idea is to get Democrats seeing that part of a winning political strategy is engaging with your neighbor as a coworker, not scolding them for their foolish beliefs, or not even just trying to win them over to our side with moral persuasion and data and look at all that the Dems have done over the years, but putting all that not aside, because Dems, local committees still need to do the political work, but putting the community work front and center. And we have a proposal that we haven't fully developed yet, but to try to do this on a national scale. Right now, it's kind of happening piecemeal, but we're learning about people like you all that are already doing it, and then we're encouraging others that go through our training or that we run into to take on a community work strategy. The other side of that coin is for Democrats also to become much more fluent in rural development policy. When Democrats, even in places like Southside and Southwest Virginia or Eastern Kentucky or Western North Carolina, when they talk about policies they want to pass, they're all good stuff, but they're rarely rural policies. They might be something that would benefit rural, like a $15 an hour minimum wage, et cetera. But Democrats actually usually don't know much about farm policy or rural development policy. Like what, because building an economy in rural areas is different from doing it in urban and suburban settings. So the other piece is just helping state parties and local Dems understand rural development and start prioritizing that, so that when they write a letter to the editor, they're not just writing about things that local people say, oh, that's just another liberal issue, but they're writing about rural issues that strike close to home for people and that would make a difference there. So those two things together, the rural development and the community works, are the third piece that we're kind of unveiling, I guess, and trying to get going and helping local committees. So that's really it. We also do monthly briefings that we'd love to have you all. We've had some, they're just 45 minutes once a month. And we've had some of our own folks and other folks come in and just kind of do a short talk and then a longer conversation about the whole spectrum of issues around the rural-urban divide. We've had just amazing speakers. That's a little kind of side benefit we do, but really helpful. But I'll stop there. I'd love to work with you guys on the community works piece, but I'd also love to see if you might be interested in your county committees from the 6 counties, perhaps co-hosting a rural urban divide training. I don't know if that sounds of interest to you, but I can explain a little bit more what it is, but I'll stop and see if you guys have questions or comments.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that. Even though I'm not a county chair or an executive committee member at the moment, but I think there's a lot of interest in Alabama to coordinate amongst county executive committees and clubs. Like we have that UDCAL, we call it, United Democratic Clubs of Alabama, which was kind of founded adjacent, I guess you'd say, to the state party. So it's kind of an unofficial organization of county executive committees and clubs to kind of share information. So I think that'd be a really good framework for inviting people to link up with RUBI as far as like doing a training, a series of meetings to kind of talk about. I think a lot of people have kind of ran to the same obstacles that other folks have found in other rural states or areas, as far as trying to get people interested and kind of break down that stigma of being identified as a Democrat. So I think that there's a lot of you find a welcome audience amongst the folks who are engaged in that group. So yeah,
Chris, is the United Democratic Club statewide or is it more local?
It's statewide.
Okay.
What all counties are involved, Marcia? List them off the top of your head. She's muted.
Hang on. Oh, there. Okay. But I think you know more than I do, Chris. You're the one that introduced me to the group. But that includes groups from Madison County, which is Huntsville, the north part of the state, Jefferson County, the big blue dot in the upper center of the state's included. Lee County, which is where kind of like where Auburn University is. I think Tuscaloosa County is also in it, which is where Alabama is. Yeah, it's pretty much statewide. Not everywhere, but it certainly covers a lot of area around the state. Yeah.
And does it ever do, functions like educational things or training things? Does it do that?
It's a brand new organization. I think it's only a few months old. So this would be, if UDCAL decided to sponsor a rural urban bridge training, this would probably be their big first thing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so a couple things about it. So the training itself has basically two parts. The first half is how did we get into this mess? And it dives pretty deeply, and we're constantly updating it with new understanding and information, but dives pretty deeply into the economic, the cultural, the social, and the political reasons behind the divide. Again, with a lens not on Trump and Hannity and all that cabal, but on us. Like, how did we help this happen? What have we done to help this happen? That's kind of the primary lens. But the first half, which is usually an hour, it's 30 minutes of presentation and 30 minutes or more, often more, of discussion. And then the second half, which can all be done at once with a little break, or it can be done like a week apart. The second half is, what do we do about it? How do we get out of the mess? How do we overcome the divide? And that also is an hour with roughly 30 minutes of presentation and 30 or more minutes of discussion. If the UDCAL, is that how you say it? If they decided to sponsor it and we had both Alabamans from the blue part of the state and the red part, that would be great and that would be fine. Because again, we feel like in the red parts of our states, people in the cities, they want to help. There's a lot of people that want to do better in rural, but they really mostly don't have a clue what the hell's going on. They're like, what's wrong with these people? What has happened? They don't get it. And sometimes they do things that really just play right into the narrative. In Virginia, we just lost our Democratic majority in 2021 that we had only gained 2 years earlier. But when we had it, there was a bill before the state legislature to do a constitutional amendment to require equity of funding in public schools. That would have been a big boost to rural schools that are hurting so badly. And it was the Democrats that shot that down from Northern Virginia. And one of the most prominent Democrats in the legislature told the press that counties like Lee County, which is close to where I am, they got to quit whining and they need to just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. So, when our allies from our party do things like that, it makes our jobs so much harder. So anytime we have an opportunity to do the training with people in the blue parts of the state, as well as the red, we're thrilled.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I met a fair number of folks from, like, Jefferson County, like Marcia mentioned, is fairly Democratic. Mobile area has, some more Democrat representation. Huntsville. So there's people who want to make those connections between the blue parts and the red parts of the state. We just didn't have the infrastructure to really make that work. So yeah, if we can get everybody in the same room together and talk about these issues, I think that'd go a long way to kind of understanding what's going on.
Right. Any other questions or comments on anything Cody and I said?
Just a comment. Part of the reason that I wanted to have this meeting was to see if we could put together a training for our state. I'm not exactly sure how to go about doing it. There are some people that couldn't make the call tonight that I think would be primary movers and shakers of that effort. I'm kind of a new person to the United Democrats movement in Alabama. But Susan's more seasoned, and I think Karen Sterling, right? And who else? Chris?
I'm trying to think of who. Those are the two big ones I know of.
Yeah.
Linda
Roger
Turner. Yeah.
in Jefferson County. Anyway, but that's really why I wanted to have this. I'm really excited about this call, was because I really think that the training and for people on this call, but for a larger group that includes some of the people we've named, to listen to the presentation and put our heads together and try to figure out how we can improve our outreach in rural Alabama, so that we don't sound pedantic and accusing. So we learn to listen a little more, maybe. I don't know exactly. I'm gonna have to, I need some training. But I'm not exactly sure where to go with it from here, is what I'm saying, to make sure it happens.
Sure. So a couple things, Marcia. The other thing I should say is that second half where we're talking about what we can do to improve, we break it into three sections. Think differently, which is a lot about kind of, starting to understand rural from a new perspective. Act differently, and that's a lot of what you guys have already begun to do, but we have some other thoughts there. And then talk differently, which is all about communication and messaging, what to say, how to not use so many words. So I think the next steps, if you guys want to try to make that happen, would be that I could take, we have a flyer that describes the training very simply, and then I could give you a little more depth, like 1-page description of the workshop, as well as some of the groups that have gone through it and what they've gotten out of it. We kind of have a little hodgepodge of that, of different, like I said, Democratic committees and others. And then if I send that all to you, then you can talk about it amongst yourselves and bring a couple of these other key people. The decisions we need to make, if first of all, is if you want to do it. Second thing is, do you want to do it virtual or in person? I just came back from Southern Illinois and did a half-day training with 4 Sierra Club chapters there. I'm sure they were all Democrats, but they weren't Democratic committees. They were Sierra Club chapters. And there is a real energy when you do it in person. It's more work for me and the RUBI folks, but it does have some real advantages. But it also does work on Zoom. The vast majority of the trainings we've done on Zoom. So we're open to either way. If you could find a fairly central place and bring, 3, 4, 5 dozen people there that you think would really benefit, we're definitely willing to come. There is a small fee, and we can talk about that. But if you get several committees co-sponsoring and others, the fee shouldn't be an issue.
Chris, when's the next meeting?
The next meeting of the UDCAL group.
Yeah.
I believe it's the first, third Tuesday every month.
Okay, so it's next week. I don't know what I'm looking. I need my calendar out. I don't know. I don't even know what day it is. I just got back from the beach.
The third Tuesday is the 19th. It's next Tuesday.
So it's next week, right? That's next week.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I have it on my calendar now that I got my calendar open. Okay.
I guess the other thing I like to bring up, typically the UDCAL group is operated independently of the state party just for expediency's sake, but there's been a shift in the state party staffing, which I believe the state party is more open to coordinating with county committees and clubs. So I'm almost wondering if we might want to also loop in a couple of the organizers from the state party and see if they might want to be engaged in the training as well, or just kind of let them know that it's a possibility to see if they might want to.
No, I think it's a good idea to do that if everyone's in agreement. But it's one of those things where if this is going to be sponsored by the United Democrats, we probably need to talk about it with that group first
That's
before we talk with Hope and Lee and Wayne and whoever else we a party, because that's kind of how it is. We like some people and other people don't seem to give us the time of day. So anyway, I don't know. I'd like to get Susan, are you still around? You got an opinion? I'm sure you have an opinion about this, but your thoughts about all this?
I do. I have a question, Anthony. You were going through the 3 things and I was writing them down. And number 1 was rural urban divide training. The
Right.
second thing was why some Dems have done better than others. And then I must have missed the 3rd thing. What was the 3rd thing?
Yeah, it's because I have a hard time explaining it in few words. That's why you missed it, Susan.
Oh,
So the second thing is the candidate assessment, which Cody
Right.
talked about.
right.
And the third thing is what we call a community work strategy, rural development community work strategy. So
Okay.
basically getting Dems to do what your committee's doing, what Marcia's committee's doing, and learn about rural development and make those policies priorities.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm going to, and can I share something with him, Chris, through this? I guess I can on this chat with everyone thing.
Yeah, you can put a link in there if you want to.
I think what I'm going to do, most of you have this, my organizing booklet.
Yeah.
Chris, you've got it. I think Marcia's got it. I've written a book on how to organize your local party. And
Wow.
I think that has a big tie into this, because this is another issue that we find here in rural Alabama is finding the people that are the volunteers. Now, we've done that through using Vote Builder and identifying Democrats and getting them involved and over the years. So we've got a good base. But I see that seems to be the biggest weakness in other areas, that you're having a meeting with. I was at Coleman the other day and I think there were 8 people. I was up at DeKalb last week, and this was the grand opening of their headquarters and everything, and the press was there, and there were tons of candidates there for the meet and greet. But I'll bet you there weren't 20 Democrats from their club in the room too. So this is what we're trying to do, is so this all ties in together. What you're doing, Anthony and Cody, is teaching people to understand really how to talk that talk. That's the problem I think people are having. They want to lash out. I totally agree with you. Marshall County is 80%, 82% to be exact, Republican. We've got Oath Keepers that live down the road from us, but we're a bedroom community to Huntsville. They're very educated and artsy on the other side. It's really an interesting thing. I come from Chicago and I love to study the whole thing. And I'm going to share that booklet with you if I can figure out how to do this and attach it. Otherwise, just Chris, share my email to Anthony and to Cody, and we can reach out somehow.
Yeah,
Okay.
you could send a link to the booklet. I'd love to see it. Cody would too, I'm sure. You could
Yeah.
just send it via email as a follow-up. Don't worry about the chat box.
All right, sounds good.
Let's do that.
And then
Susan, do you, from your perspective, do you think there would be
Oh, I
interest in
definitely
supporting
do.
the training?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've been sitting back thinking about this. We meet at our local library, and we have a big internet broadband issue here in the entire state, where our rural communities just don't have broadband. And you can imagine, I live in we're in rural Alabama for sure, but you would think that downtown Gunnersville would have better broadband. And our library, we meet in the auditorium, and we don't have good broadband to even reach our auditorium, where I have a meeting with, like 100 people that we could be training on one giant Zoom call. So I'm trying to
Right.
figure out, does it make sense to have everybody dial up on their own, or get them all in a room and make them pay attention?
I would say it makes a whole lot more sense to have people in person, because people are going to be more engaged.
I
You
agree.
can actually
That's
work
the whole thing,
together to
so-
make a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Virtual, it's okay. But as a teacher, I can tell you my kids in class get a whole lot more than my ones on the computer, no matter how much I try to engage them, no matter how much they're looking at me. It's still not
True.
the same, especially if you're wanting to do something this big and this important. If it's possible, I would say have people meet in a central location and actually be face to face.
Well, that's another issue of travel. I mean, not everybody can travel 4 hours across the state or whatever to meet. So Zoom is nice, and it may be nice to offer both
Right.
in person and my club group is, I mean, they're like sponges. They eat up all this stuff. They tell me they just love coming to meetings because they go away, they've learned something. And I think it's important for us to continue to offer stuff like this to our organizations. So I'll be curious to see how much it's going to cost, and maybe it's something we can do on our own. It may duplicate some of the stuff that we do already, but it's always nice for them to hear it from someone else.
Yeah, there probably won't be much duplication, Susan, because what we don't do in the training, because so many other people do it, is the nitty gritty of using Vote Builder, of designing a door knocking campaign, of social media. We don't touch any of that. This is all a couple of steps before. It's trying to get people into a new mindset about rural and the origins of the divide and what to do about it. So, the kind of training that you're doing in your book about volunteers, I'd say they're complementary, but there's probably very little overlap. And so why don't we do this? I am going to have to get off, but before I get off, two things. One is, let's kind of walk away from here with a tentative plan to do the training sometime this summer. I have a farm and a business, so I can slip away I don't know where the central place would be in Alabama, but it would probably be a day down, do the training, and then a day back would be for me. And I can make that happen as long as I have a little lead time. It's, the next steps there would be gathering kind of a planning group to figure out the details. And if you are going to do it in person, and I agree with Hayden that I think that is preferable. But if you are going to do that, where, and then how do you get the invite out, et cetera, et cetera. So let's kind of just start planning and try to get a date on the calendar within a few weeks. Then the other thing is the work that you guys are underway with in your community service projects. I'm hoping that you will become part of like, a peer learning group, because we have a few in Virginia. There's some in some other places that are just getting underway. And we're talking about creating like a affiliate, not separate from RUBI, but as part of RUBI, to just bring folks who are doing that very thing from all around the country together to talk through what's working and what kind of results they're seeing. Is it changing the Democratic brand at all, et cetera. So we would love to have you all in that mix as well at some point, probably within the next month or so.
That sounds good. Yeah, I think Birmingham would be a good location that's kind of centrally located in the state.
Okay.
So we could find somewhere there that we could host it, and then I don't think it hurt to kind of pull on the ear of the state party and say, hey, this is something the county party is really interested in. Would y'all like to be involved too? Because that would be a good way to get them engaged and kind of, because I think there is a new appetite for getting local groups involved, and I think having some outside perspective, like from y'all's group, would be welcome to kind of shake things up a bit. So
Sure.
I'm pretty excited about that.
And certainly from our point of view, if UDCAL's okay with it, we'd love to have the state party, some senior staff there. We've done the training with one state party so far. It was Virginia's last summer, and it went really, really well. I'm going to be doing it with the Nebraska state party in October. But, if we're going to change things quickly enough, we've got to have state party people on our bus too. We can't do it all just at the local level. So if you can get them interested, we'd be all for it.
Okay. Well, I think it's really fortuitous that there's a meeting of the UDCAL group next Tuesday for discussion of this. I hope, do you think Emily's going to send the meeting notice out? Do you have
I'll check with her, but she usually does a day or two before. So
Okay, because it seems like that would be the first group to talk to about this, and then after that, get the plan to rope the state party in if we can. This might be something that they would even think about funding, just because it's not electioneering type stuff. It's really going to benefit the party. Yeah, maybe candidates will learn something, but it really is about benefiting the party and growing the party. So they might, you never know. I don't know if Birmingham's the right place for it. It depends. It's not the most central place. Montgomery probably is, or actually Clanton is the center of the state. If you ever want to do the geography,
Yeah, that's
is
true.
where Martha lives. But I'm just not sure of the space. The other idea would be whether or not to do a hybrid meeting. I hate to give people that option though, because then they take it and they don't show up for in person. I've had that experience myself with our meetings. People that could come decide to Zoom it because then they don't have to get out of their chairs so much. So,
Yeah, we'll talk through all those different things as well.
So-
And the other thing about hybrids, although I understand why we do them, but it's really hard to present to a group of people in a room and a group of people on a screen, and to ensure what's harder than presenting is ensuring that everybody gets involved in the discussion.
yeah, it's almost
So,
always only half of the group. Either the Zoom group does a
Yeah.
lot or the in-person group does a
yeah,
lot.
so,
Yeah.
we're open to doing both, but it's tough to pull off. We all know that. So I'll tell you what, before Tuesday, Chris, I'll get you a little more information, maybe not all of it, but the flyer and a little bit more of a description of that and the cost. And then you'll have all that to take to the Tuesday meeting.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right.
All
It's
right,
been great
great.
meeting you all. I'm really
Yes, thanks
so
for
excited
getting
about
on
what
with
you're
us.
doing. Yeah, this is
I
Thank you
don't
so
great.
much.
Yeah, I don't know if it worked, you guys, but I did put the link in the chat box of our booklet, our
I
organizing
see. I
booklet.
think it might be linked to your local drive.
That's what I'm wondering if I did that. So I'll just send it. Well, Chris, it's on our shared files.
Okay. I'll yeah, I think I might have a copy of it. I'll check there.
Yeah,
If
we
I
may
can
not
find it.
have the most recent
Yeah,
edition. but
I've
we
got
got it.
a copy in Chris's shared files. Yeah, that's where
Okay.
mine.
If you want to
Yeah.
forward it to everybody, Marcia, that'd be fine.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you all.
Thank
Take
you.
Lovely
care.
to see you all.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.